Well, good morning. Uh, have you ever heard of Murphy's Law? I just had all my gear set up out here, thought it was ready to go, and then the neighbor started mowing the lawn. And the fellow back here has some sort of electrical equipment going of some sort. So I think I'm going to have to start again. Well, take two. Now within the safe confines of four walls. I've decided to keep wearing my hat. Mostly because I hardly ever wear it. I bought it a couple of summers ago at the Multicultural Festival in Victoria Park. And it's just been sitting in the closet. So I thought, well, here's an occasion. Well, you may have heard that we're into phase 2 of reopening in the province of Ontario. And the news is that churches are welcome to open to a capacity of 30%. So I've been talking with worship committee, about the possibility of opening up for the summer. And for a number of reasons, the consensus is to continue online, at least until July, with Zoom calls and not with the pre-recorded videos. And we haven't got a final word on this yet, but that seems to be the direction we're going. This is the 14th, next Sunday the 21st. And then the 28th, we're going to have a break for the long weekend, and then we'll start our summer schedule. And this is the second in a 3-part series in parables. Last week I was talking about parables as a genre of spiritual teaching, likening them to an appetizer that piques our hunger and keeps us waiting for the entree. Or better said, gets us out searching for the entree, like maybe rummaging in the kitchen to see what we can put together. Parables make us work. They make us sing for our supper. And with parables, there's never just one entree. The menu is quite extensive. The very same parable can mean different things for different people at different times. So today I want to take a look at 2 parables from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15. And I want to thank Noah and Elisa for reading them in such a dramatic way. I'm wondering if anyone spotted a contradiction between what was read and what I've been saying. Just note again how these parables end. The sheep. I say to you that likewise there will be more joy in heaven at one sinner repenting than at 99 righteous, those who have no need of repentance. And the ending of the parable of the coin. Likewise I say to you, there will be more rejoicing before the angels of God at one sinner repenting. Both of them end with an interpretation, a punchline, if you will. And I've been saying the opposite. That parables make us work for our supper. They send us out searching for the meaning. Here in Luke, it seems clear that the lost sheep and the lost coin are symbols for the individual sinner. Here the meaning, the meal, so to speak, seems to be served up for us on a platter. The shepherd and the woman stand for God. God keeps searching and searching until the one who is lost in sin repents, and then there is great rejoicing. So what about this? It is definitely a contradiction. Well, this does get us into the somewhat complex question of the biblical text, how it came to be, and how we are to best understand it. Scholars like Amy Jill Levine are of the opinion that Luke, the gospel writer, has added his own interpretation to a parable of Jesus, which would not have originally contained the punchline. Jewish parables as a genre do not hand us the conclusion. They don't carry a spoken interpretation. They make us do the work. And so it seems that Luke has taken some editorial license in his gospel account. he writes as if Jesus is speaking the whole thing, when in fact Luke is adding his little bit at the end. We can see the same dynamic at work if we compare it to Matthew's version in chapter 18. In Matthew chapter 18, the section in which the parable is included begins with the story of Jesus welcoming the children. And just before the parable, Matthew has Jesus saying this: "Take care that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you, in heaven their angels continually see the face of my Father in heaven." Then immediately follows the parable, and Jesus ends it with the following words: "So it is not the will of your Father in heaven that one of these little ones should be lost." So this is a different ending. And notice that there is no mention at all of sinning or repenting. The concern is for the little ones who seem to be at risk of being lost. Now, Matthew's chapter 18 is the place where he talks about how to deal with an offending brother or sister in the church community. Go to the person and deal with it. If they won't listen, take another member and go to them. And if they still won't listen, bring it before the church council and so on. So it seems like Matthew has a communal context in mind. So it could very likely be that little ones refer to the church community. Maybe they are less mature members. Maybe they're Gentiles who don't know the Jewish laws. Maybe they're people who've been led away by false teaching. The point is that each author is adapting what was an original parable of Jesus to his own context and setting. And the problem, if you could call it that, is that they write the parable as if Jesus were saying the whole thing. And this is what creates some of the complexity. It does pose a problem if you've been taught that the Bible is absolutely accurate and beyond question. Some have been taught to believe that if the Bible says that Jesus said it, then Jesus said it. End of story. And so it bothers some people to bring in this idea that the gospel authors changed or adapted the words that Jesus actually said. For if they did this, how can we actually know what Jesus actually said? And how can we trust the text? And this is a difficult and unsettling question for some people. I've heard some conservative friends say that if we start going down this road, we're on a slippery slope. Like we're standing on a banana peel, and pretty soon we'll undermine the authority of the Bible. I can understand their concern, but I don't see any way around it. As Christians, I feel we're called to engage the text with our best thinking and in conversation with the best scholarship available. And simply retreating into some sort of bubble of belief or circle of certainty has only served to give Christianity a bad name. The Bible is a complicated text. It's an ancient text. It's an edited text. It's complex. And just because it reveals the influence of the author does not mean it's not useful, doesn't mean it's not inspired, and it doesn't mean it's not authoritative. I think it can actually amplify the richness of the text. Here we can see Luke's interpretation. And it's a fine interpretation. It's his way of reading the parable. There's great rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents. This parable is spoken to many people. People who felt estranged from God, who've made big mistakes, and who are feeling discouraged. The message to them is God will never give up on you. Each individual is important. God will search and search and search until he or she finds you, and then there will be great rejoicing. This is a good and solid interpretation, but it's not the only one. Jesus originally told the parable in a more open-ended fashion. he most likely ended it with the words, "Rejoice with me, I found my sheep. Rejoice with me, I found my lost coin." It was left to the hearers to come up with their own interpretation. Well, what's he talking about? What's the sheep? What's the coin? Who's the woman? Who's the shepherd? If we leave it more open-ended, we can explore other meanings. So often, we automatically put the emphasis on the thing that was lost, in this case, the sheep or the coin, and that's because Luke does it, and so we're trained in this way. But what would happen if we put our attention instead on the ones who did the losing, on the shepherd and on the woman? Because they, in many ways, seem to be the real action figures in these parables. They're the ones who notice that something's missing. And when they do, they're the ones that go out on a search. And they don't finish their search until they find. And when they find, they call the community, they call their neighbors and friends and rejoice with them. So who says they have to be a representation of God? Maybe the shepherd and the woman are not meant to be God. Maybe Jesus is actually inviting us to see ourselves in them. Maybe they are us. If this were the case, it would invite us to ponder some new questions. In our own lives, how do we notice what we've lost? Are we noticing? Are we losing things and don't even realize it? Is it possible to live in such a way that we don't notice? And if and when we do notice, what do we do? Do we go searching diligently? Do we have perseverance, or do we just write off the loss? So this is another way of approaching these parables. And it could be an interesting exercise. And I don't want to come to any conclusions here. We all have to come to our own conclusions. I just want to ponder a bit with the few minutes I have left. The parable seems to suggest that it's a good thing in this particular case to search for what is lost. Both the shepherd and the woman really wouldn't have to, because it's not their last thing. The shepherd still has 99 sheep. The woman still has a bunch of coins, so they could leave it if they wanted. But something compels them to search. So it would seem that the thing that's lost is precious. And maybe it's the sense of completeness or wholeness that's precious. So what might be a corollary for us? Well, maybe it's possible that we're so busy and distracted that we don't even take notice of what we've lost. Maybe the strange time of COVID has been helping us to notice. Some of us have been noticing that we have more time these days for ourselves, to actually meet and talk to our neighbors, more attention even to pay to social issues and concerns. So I wonder, what about lost time? Maybe we've become so busy and overbooked that we don't even realize we've lost time. Time to think, time to be present to the most important things in life. Maybe we've lost a healthy balance, and we're being called by the parable to go out and search diligently to recapture it. And then when we do, to call a big party. Or here's another possibility. Thinking of the Black Lives Matter movement, thinking of the death of George Floyd, is it possible that we've lost the plot on racism in our society? Maybe we've forgotten how serious and debilitating it is for the racially marginalized among us, for Indigenous Canadians, for unseen migrant workers. Maybe we've become so accustomed to the injustice, to the disparities that exist, that we don't even see them anymore. Maybe we've been so accustomed to our white privilege, we don't even know that it's there. What would it mean if sheep were justice and the coin were equality? And what would it mean for us to search diligently for them, search until we find them? So one can go into different directions with this parable. I'm sure there are other ways. What might it look for you in your life? What might you have lost that it would be good for you to go out and search for? And what about our church community? What might it mean for us? Well, I think that's enough for today. Part 3 will continue next week, the final in this little mini-series. So until then, signing off.